All right, folks. Well, is it the fourth Saturday of the month? It is, which means it's the Learn Pro Poker study group here at Rec Poker, where premium members get to watch an hour-long training video every month, prepared by Ryan LaPlante and the team over at Learn Pro Poker, and then we get together later in the month to kind of review the material and talk a little bit about what the subject of the study video was this month. So this month it was all about final tables and ICM factors and ICM pressure and that kind of thing. And Ryan's really natural at this point, I think, talking about those kinds of spots in the tournament. Although I thought it was really interesting in the video, he was talking about how he felt like it was a weak spot for him. And so he was working with Dara and Barry on adding some new material to the site. That was about now a year and a half ago, so I don't know how that's progressed since then. But that I thought was kind of interesting because Ryan's a tournament player consistently, so he's playing in ICM spots a lot and final table spots a lot. So I thought that was interesting for him to say that didn't feel like that was necessarily an area of strength for him. Or did you guys read it more as him saying they just didn't have that much stuff on the site about that subject material? What was your take on that?
I think it was both. I read it both ways, but mostly the latter, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
where he wanted to build that up on the site and also was comfortable saying that he could learn something from somebody that was a little bit more into the math of the ICM stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Which
That's
surprised
what.
me because I thought he was fairly into the math of the ICM stuff.
Yeah, me too. That's what I mean. I was surprised as well. I mean, it's great to hear people like Ryan who are obviously so good at the game and so experienced. Um, it's refreshing to hear that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, I guess he's being humble about it, right? That humility about having areas of inexperience, or I guess no one's good at everything, right? And even within poker, there's a lot of different aspects of the game and different. That's one of the things we love about it, right? All the different ways that people can study. Just the general size of the game is so big, no one's going to be good at everything. What about you guys? Or Dave, what did you have to say? You were gonna chime in there, I think.
Well, I wish I watched this earlier and had spent more time on it. I kind of rushed it just an hour ago, but
Hmm.
the there were a couple of things that kind of I did wonder about a little bit, where
Mm-hmm.
he was a little bit more aggressive than my internalized what to do in ICM situations would tell me with some things. And I think some of it was because some of the earlier examples he was doing was from a fairly small tournament where there was like 18 people or something, and he was thinking that the bubble was less of a impact than it would have been in a larger tournament, or less of a less significant to him. Or
Yeah, the first
basically,
one,
it was
the
an
it was
early ace king hand that he was instantly shoving, and I thought should have given some consideration to not. But I don't know whether, and I didn't do any studying to see whether my not was a viable solution or not. To just the fold everything mentality is what struck me first.
I remember that hand. I remember looking at that hand. We're about 30 big blinds effective. Ryan's on the button with ace king. He covers the player in the small blind, but the player in the big blind covers him. Rob, did you see that one as well?
Yeah, I just started watching it about 10 minutes before we
Oh, great.
this meeting. So I'm on that hand right now. And yeah, he said something about ICM being a big part of he had a lot of ICM pressure because of his stack size.
Because there were
Because
shorter
obviously,
stacks on that table or other
correct,
tables. Yeah.
correct. You know, there's three. I mean, if for three from the bubble, there's three stacks shorter, much shorter than him at the table. So to me, it was more like,
He said it, but then,
why would you jam there?
Hmm.
yeah,
To me, he's suggesting we jam there with ace king against a guy who covers us in the big blind. Now, obviously, ace king has a hell of a lot of equity against any two cards, but why risk that many chip when there are so many short stacks around? And he made some comment about his ICM factor was like 8 or 9. And I didn't get that because I'm used to thinking in terms of bubble factor or risk factor that they talk about, you know. So I don't know what 8 or 9 means.
I didn't know what that meant either. But it's interesting. He did say that there was a very significant ICM implication, but then I think he kind of dismissed it with it was only an 18-person tournament, and I think the size of, I don't know, I think this small size of things kind of pulled them away from the ICM factor a bit.
There's some kind of correlation there between like the bubble factor and the size of the tournament. I think, Rob, you've worked on this a lot through the book study, but in a larger field tournament, first place is bigger and the jumps are relatively smaller. So in a small, which one is caching more important in? I don't remember. Is it more important to cache in the small ones, or is it more important to cache in the big ones versus going deep, or am I just misremembering one of
I
the?
don't remember Dara talking about the importance of caching based on the field size. He talks more about the potential of caching based on the field size. So you're going to cache more often in 100 player field than you are 1,000 player field. So I don't know that that should be a concern or a factor unless you're multi-tabling 10 tournaments and you really don't care. You know, you just want to make the best EV decision you can, regardless of ICM, because the amount of the tournament just isn't enough to get you excited. But from the standpoint of strict ICM, I don't know that there's a difference. You have to, regardless of the size of the tournament, when you get to that bubble, that's the first place that you can actually make some of your money back, right? You're going to get some of your buy-in back. You're going to get your buy-in plus something back. So it's your first opportunity to cash the tournament. So why would you want to just throw it away by jamming 20 big blinds into a 60 big blind stack?
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I was getting the sense that he was dismissing the bubble as not a very big number. Like if this is only 18-person tournament, then it's probably, I don't know. There's no logic. There's no
Because
great logic to what I'm saying.
the interesting thing about that is that like the min cache is almost going to be the same no matter how large the size of the tournament is.
I know that's why I'm not really. Yeah, it threw me a bit.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
I think that he let the. I think for some reason the 18-person field pushed him more into the I want to win this tournament and less into the I want to cash in this tournament. Whether that was rightly or wrongly, I think that's what the jam was about.
Well, it's like Rob was saying about caching. Like you're also more likely to win a small field tournament than a large field tournament, just like you're more likely to make the money in a small field tournament than in a large field tournament. But the benefit is a lot less for winning a small field tournament than winning a large field tournament, because there's just a smaller multiplier for the prize pool. So yeah, I think that was really interesting. I'd like to talk to Ryan about sort of like what that correlation was when it comes to the action on that hand. This is something that I honestly I know what the textbook answers are to this, but I still struggle with this conceptually. And ace king is a pretty good example to use for a hand like this. So we're saying the lesson from the video is that we should be shoving ace king here, I think. And then he went through a bunch of other hands that he'd also shove: ace king, ace queen, ace jack, tens through queens. And then there was this it was the assumption that I made was that he'd be min raising hands like kings and aces, and then some of the other in between hands in there. So I guess like nines down and stuff like that. And he was talking about how what he really wants to avoid is opening and then getting shoved on by the big blind. So we hear these, the textbook answer is that shoving yourself is actually lower variance because you don't see a flop very often. And that, calling or opening and then calling is a higher variance play because you actually have to, you have to actually make a hand. But when we're holding ace king, and I struggle with this a lot, and I'm probably just going to mention it. I'm probably going to ask this question like every 4 months for the rest of my life, because I ask this question of the group every once in a while, and everyone gives me a good answer. And at the end of it, I still just don't understand. If we have ace king, like, don't we really want to be playing a hand against a lot of the hands that this guy's going to be shoving with from the big blind? Like, if we open and they shove, they're going to be doing it with hands like ace queen, ace jack, maybe even king queen, or some other hands like that we completely dominate. Isn't that what we want? Like, don't we want to be playing hands where our opponent has 3 outs to beat us and we're completely dominating them? Like, I know they're also going to have aces, they're going to have pocket aces, and they're going to have pocket kings and stuff when they shove. But they're going to have those aces and kings when we shove too, and they're not going to fold them. So shoving doesn't eliminate the times when they have those super nutted hands. We just really don't want to flip ace king against like pocket tens so much that we'll also turn down the chance to flip against ace queen and ace jack. Is that it?
What was, I wouldn't think so, but did you remind me what the hand was? Was there a third person in the hand, or?
Yeah, so
There's 3 people.
We're on the button, about 30 big blinds effectively. There's a player in the small blind who we cover, and then there's a player in the big blind who covers us.
By a lot or by a little, or?
By about a quarter of our stack again, or something, or maybe more than that. I think we had like 114,000 and they had 180,000 or something like that.
Okay. I'm just playing around with some poker coaching stuff here at the
Oh,
moment.
cool.
There's some multi-way charts that I haven't really used, so I'm not sure this is going to work, but I just watched the video, so I'm going to try it.
Sweet. Yeah, good
This
for you.
seems to
Set
be
it
a
up.
chart for a 3-way with 35 big blinds, 20 big blinds, and 25 big blinds, which I think means like somebody, then small blind, basically
Yeah.
button, small blind, big blind.
Yeah,
Which
that's a
sounds
similar
close to what we
dynamic.
said.
The right people are covering the right people. That makes sense.
So what is this telling me? This was an ICM chart for that. And it's telling me, but which position were we?
Button.
We were button. So that's got a lot of. God, now I don't know. I shouldn't have started this because now I don't know.
Here, no, Rob, you talk a little bit while Dave's working on the setup there, because I know you had some thoughts about that.
Well, as I watched the hand play out just now, and it was interesting. I don't think if he would have shoved, it would have ended up any different.
Hmm.
I think, though, that the mistake that was made in the hand was after the small blind shoved and the big blind called, then he went over the top and shoved over the top.
Hmm.
Now he's introducing
Hmm.
that variance that he didn't want. I think personally, I would have probably just folded in that spot.
Hmm. Because the bubble's so close, like just to get to
Yep.
the bubble.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, if you shove, the guy, the big blind is calling you.
He's calling. Yeah.
Yeah, he's calling you. So you're not gaining any fold equity by jamming there. So I believe I would have probably played it to min open and then fold to the jam. Or
Hmm.
fold to the jam and the call.
And the overcall. Yeah.
Yep.
What was the action again then?
It was folded to button.
And that's us.
Button. Yeah.
Yep, that's us. We min raised, and then the big blind went all in, or the
A
small
small
blind
blind.
went all
Yeah.
in, and the big blind called. And then we and the button jammed into two people that have already shown interest in the pot. Well, one of them was already all in, so they can't do anything, but the other person in the pot has us covered.
Okay, so
So
this is showing a lot of, this is showing 44% min bet and 55% fold here. So with ace king, it's showing min bet. And then the small blind called,
nope, small blind jammed
small blind jammed. Okay. Small blind jammed. So let's see what happens when I click that button.
about 30, about 30,000. So it was about, 20,000 more than our min open. But he didn't have many chips. He had like 36,000 chips.
So
And
this,
then the big blind called, and then we
yeah,
come
this is
back, and
showing a big,
instead of just calling, we decide to jam.
yeah, this chart is not showing jam here. It's showing call for everything, for all the pairs down to fours and for
Yeah, I just think that
ace down to ace seven offsuit and ace six suited. I don't know if
And
I get
Dave,
this right.
Dave, this is an ICM model that you're looking at.
It's an ICM, what's it? ICM with a small ante
Yep.
three-way
That's the
with
situation.
35 big blinds for the button, 20 big blinds for the small blind, and 25 big blinds for the big blind. So maybe I had that wrong then. The big blind had us covered, right?
Yeah.
right.
Big blind that was covered. Yeah.
Maybe I did the wrong one. Let's
No,
see
but
if I,
that'll only accentuate it though, because if it's saying call when we have the big blind covered, then it'll definitely not want us shoving when the big blind covers us in an ICM spot. That tweak wouldn't.
oh no, sorry. No, I had it right. So 35 big, button, big, oh, sorry. There's
No,
different
no.
charts here. Let
Yeah,
me
yeah.
just try to click a different
It's
one.
like 27, 20 for this big blind, or for the button, about 7 for the small blind, about 30 for the big blind.
27,
Just use
30.
27 and 30,
I got, okay, the second one. So I got,
and
I
that'll be
got,
really close to what we're.
I got
Hmm.
15, 12, 21. I have a,
Yeah, 15, 12, 21 would work. That's fine. That's the same
15,
kind
12,
of
21. Let's do a
Yep,
15,
kind
12.
of
15,
kind of
12, 21
dynamic.
would be pretty similar.
Okay,
Yep.
so button is showing 17% min raise of 12%, 13% all in, then 70% fold before anything happens. So it was,
70% fold.
yeah. But the ace king offsuit is showing most is showing
And this is to open the action, Dave, that you're talking about? This is one
Yeah,
of-
to open the action, they're showing some min bets and some all ins. Is that
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Ground, yeah. It's showing min betting ace king suited and usually min betting, but sometimes going all in with ace king offsuit.
Hmm.
So what did we do? We opened
Yeah,
button
we min
opened, right?
raised and then the small blind shoved.
Okay, button min raised, so I click that. Okay, and then the small blind went all in. I'll click that.
Then the big blind just called
And
the
the
all in.
big blind. Oh, then, what the button? What did we do on the button then?
That's the question. What is it? What does it want us to do in that spot?
Okay. I don't know if I did something wrong again, but this is showing green stuff, which I guess is call for the ace king off and ace
Yeah,
king suited if I did it right.
that makes sense. So,
And if
so what are the shoves then? What should we be reshoving with? Are we doing it with anything? Are we doing it with our better hands like aces and kings? Are we doing it with like kings and queens? But
not on
holding
this has
aces
got no
back?
shoves. This has got no
Oh,
shoves if I did
interesting.
it right.
Interesting. Okay.
It's got calling 39% and folding 61%.
Because I do
But
think
this is a
about
little
this.
bit this is a little
It's
bit smaller than we are here.
yeah, but that would you'd think that would just incentivize them to shove more, not less. So that doesn't matter. Because I do think it like if you're only ever supposed to be shoving aces for value, then can we even have a shoving range? Like if we're not going to put anything in it other than aces, shouldn't we just bring aces back into our calling range and just call with everything instead? Like
That's
how valuable is it to have a shoving range if it only has one hand in it? Is it just an exploit where we're just like, well, the guy's not folding, so I'm just going to go for it with aces?
I don't know. This is not saying to shove aces either. Right?
Yeah.
This is just calling basically.
So what do you think,
Pairs to
Rob? Should we even have a shoving range there?
I, I might shove aces just because it's such a pretty hand. But um
Me too.
I tend to play much tighter in these kind of spots.
Yeah.
Ace king is a great hand. I mean, but it can also, like we saw in this particular hand, even pocket threes can beat ace king.
Yep.
And so there's so many opportunities for the bigger stack to take us out of the tournament. And it's a crime to leave the tournament when there's so many shorter stacks
Mm-hmm.
prior to the bubble. So
Mm-hmm.
I might min open, hoping to get a couple folds. And when they didn't, I would just fold and let it play out because again, there's too many small stacks for me to risk that many blinds on, against a player that has me covered. Now I don't have any of the payoff information, so we can't really figure out the bubble factors to what percentage of hands, we should be calling. But I would probably play it very, very tight and fold that ace king as soon as the other player calls the jam. Now, if the big blind folds, I call all day long
Against the small blind. Yeah.
against a small blind.
Yeah.
But when that big blind gets involved and he calls, then I don't want to get involved.
Because he's got you covered. So you're putting
Correct.
a lot of emphasis on the ICM factors here,
Right.
being this close to the bubble, having these short stacks around.
Yep.
Let's say
And
it's a
now if
couple.
you call, if you just call that jam, right?
Yeah.
And the call from the jam, if you just call, now you're in a spot where if he bets at all, you're going to have to fold
Mhm.
unless hit ace king or something, you're going to have to fold if he bets out on the flop. So, and he could be doing that as a you know, um, as a bluff with a flush draw, whatever, because he's got you covered. So he can do a lot of
Mhm.
damage to you. Not only that, but in a three-way pot, the equity of your ace king goes down. Instead of being heads up, now you're three-way. So now it's a
Mhm.
33% split in the equity, right?
Mhm.
So even in a call and it goes all the way to the river with no future betting, your equity with your ace king goes way, way down. So
So
there you go.
so the way we're talking about it is interesting. Because if we do call, we are going to be in a spot where it's a less than 1-to-1 SPR at that point. I
Mhm.
think we're going to have to fold a ton of the time post flop, even if we make one pair. Like if they called, do we think I guess my question is this: should we even call if we're going to have to
No,
fold all the time
no,
post flop?
that was my point. I don't think
Yeah,
we can call there because the equities distribution is so it dilutes your equity, and the guy with the big stack can bet with impunity,
right,
and we have to fold.
right.
So why put that in there? Even though we have position, that doesn't mean shit because of the shortness of where everybody's at. I mean, what do we have left? 13 big blinds, right? We started with 20. We have 13 left. He's got 23 left. Yeah, it's just, yeah, I don't like it.
No, you don't like it.
I don't like
Uh,
putting myself into spots where it's difficult to make a decision if it's not automatic.
yeah, and I don't
And
like
there's
putting
time.
my no, go ahead, please.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't like putting myself in spots where it then becomes mathematically correct to call off in suboptimal spots because you've already got so much in the pot, you've got so little back behind.
Yep.
Like I find that I get in that spot a lot where um at this point in the hand, now it makes sense for me to just get it in, even though I don't have a premium holding because of the odds I'm getting. And
Right.
we can kind of handcuff ourselves into spots like that on earlier streets by not being thoughtful about, calling or getting ourselves into pots where
Right.
we're not going to have a lot back and we're going to have to commit.
Yeah, I think if I had played that hand again, I would have probably opened for a min open and saw the action, and then I would have probably just folded.
Yep.
Let them guys fight it out. Hopefully, the big stack takes out the shorter stack, and we're one closer to the bubble.
Yep. Yep. So the bubble play really is key. I mean, it really is. It completely changes how we approach the hand, I think.
Yep. Oh yeah, definitely.
And Rob, if it was earlier in the tournament, I guess the question is how close to the bubble do we start being this conservative? And it's an impossible question to actually answer because every tournament's different. But there comes a point earlier in the tournament where we would
Oh yeah, definitely.
re-raise when it comes back to us.
Well,
Um,
if you think about the deep dives that we just went through, we went through stages of the tournament. Now, early in the tournament, you want to play tighter. You want to make nut hands and try to chip up. And in the middle of the tournament, that's when you're trying to you you're going to embrace more variance.
mhm.
After the early stage, you get into what Alex calls the dog
Accumulation.
fights. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
dog fight, which is the accumulation stage. There, you're willing to um, take on more variance because you're trying to build up a stack so that when you do get to the bubble, you're in a good position and you have a good ability to run to the championship, basically.
Well,
So
and you see how important it is to be the player with the bigger stack, right?
Yep.
It completely changes the dynamic of how other people in the hand have to play. So it's extremely
Right.
valuable.
And always keep in mind when you're talking ICM spots that the ICM pressure on the large stack and on the small stacks is much smaller than the ICM pressure on the middle stacks.
Hmm.
And we're in that middle stack right now. So we have the most ICM pressure of those two players.
Hmm. Yeah, like you say, the worst thing we can do is bust before these other shorter stacks do, given that we're close to this big pay jump here.
Right.
And so even if
So
we were, yeah, go ahead, Dave, please.
So I was just playing with it a little bit again, and we just called, and the big blind was still have a decision whether to shove behind us, right? Have I got
No.
that right?
No, we'd be
No, that would
closing the
close the
action.
action.
We'd be closing
We
the action. So we
Yeah.
open, the small
We open.
blind raises, the
Jams.
big blind calls,
Mhm.
and then it's around to us. The small blind's
Yeah.
already all in.
Okay, but then at that point in time, we could have
We
called,
could,
shoved, or folded, right?
that's right. That's
Right.
right. Yeah.
So, and if we just called,
Then we go to the flop.
then oh yeah, because big blind already called. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's all right. So
And
yeah, so we close the action there.
So having done that, then what am I doing now?
Yeah, see, in the actual hand, the guy went all in,
Right.
which I think is a mistake.
And Ryan says in the video, I think we can get some folds from the big blind here, which is why he doesn't think shoving is as much of a mistake. So I don't know. I don't know what assumptions you have that make that true or not true.
Yeah.
But he's definitely counting on having some fold equity when he pulls the trigger on that raise. Because otherwise, Rob, I think you're right. If you don't have any fold equity, then it's not as effective a hand choice for that play. Did you get something in there, Dave, that
Well,
made sense?
I don't
to
know
you?
if I screwed something up, but something that I'm gonna try it one more time. But if no, I must have screwed something up.
What's it telling you that's giving you
Well,
this confusing?
it was telling me that if we just called, then the I don't know, I did something wrong because what I had in my head was that the big blind was only going to call us with a very with nines plus and ace queen plus, but no.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure whether I did something completely wrong with that, or I'm saying something that makes no sense because of the betting. But
Well, he should be. I mean, he shouldn't be calling and overcalling with pocket threes like they do
yeah,
in the video. That's I would put them on a. I would advise a tighter range than that
so
for whatever that's worth.
button in bets, small blind, all in. Sorry, big blind min bet, small blind all in. Button called, right?
Uh,
Yep.
the in this example, yeah.
The big blind
Okay.
called, and
Okay,
we're on the
no,
button, and we
so we're at
jammed.
the. See, that's this why I keep getting this screwed up. I keep mixing up the button and the big blind because it's
Oh,
not giving me any decisions now. Here it's
Well, I'm trying to figure out what you're looking at
do you
because
want to
most
share your screen, Dave? Share your screen. Let's take a look at it with you. Maybe we can help.
okay. So I'll try to start it when it's over here. How do I share the screen?
Down at the bottom of the in your Zoom window, there should be a green little button on the menu that says share screen. then you can pick a monitor or something.
Okay, Zoom window, share screen. Let's try this. You see anything here?
Something's coming through. Yeah, this is the poker coaching ICM chart.
Okay, so I'm gonna reload here and start from the beginning.
Okay, cool.
So it's ICM small ante, which is like an online as opposed to a big blind ante.
Yep.
Number of ways. So this is a multi-way thing for ICM. 3 ways. If I click this 3-way button here. And the closest thing I found was this 15, 12, 21.
Mm-hmm.
So big blind has 15 big blinds, small blind has 12 big blind, or the button, sorry, the button has 15. Since I keep screwing up by mixing up big blind.
Yeah, that's okay.
Button has
Yeah,
15,
that's the
small blind
right.
has 12, big blind has 21. That's
That feels like the right dynamic. Yeah.
okay. So what happens? Button
Button mins.
min bets. So I click on
Yeah.
this min button here.
Yep. Small
And
blind.
then
They
small
go all
blind.
in. No, go up, go up, go up.
Oh yeah,
There
small
you go.
blind.
Small
Okay, yeah,
blind.
here. Small blind
All
goes
in.
all in. So I click
Yep.
all in here.
And then all button calls.
Button call.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Where's
wait a
the
minute.
big blind?
Where's the big blind?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, see,
Why
this
isn't
is
the big
this is
blind
where
up
I'm
next? That's
screwing
Big
up.
weird.
blind's
This is
down
what's
below.
confused me.
Scroll down
I
right
thought
here.
it brought,
There.
I thought it brought everything to the top, but it didn't. So this now
That's
it's the big blind is the next act.
but it
The
doesn't
big
give it a
blind,
call.
right. There's no call for the big blind.
It's saying it just
So,
never calls because it only has 21 big blinds. That's the
right.
problem. It doesn't, that's the problem. It's eliminated. There is no decision tree option for the big blind to
Right.
call because they're too short.
Yeah, so
So
maybe I should have
we
put
just
that
don't get to
before.
know. Is there another? I didn't see another
There's
blind
not a lot of
breakdown
options here.
that matches the dynamic that we're looking for, unfortunately.
Yeah, so what about
So if the
this?
big blind goes all in, we still call with our ace king.
Do we? Here,
Yep.
go down to big blind and click all in for us. Let's see what. Yeah, click that one.
Okay,
Yeah,
now it's saying button.
Oh
it's saying
no, we
Call
suited.
fold.
says king suited and fold as king off.
That's exactly what I would have done.
Yeah, that's how you were talking about it. That is how you were
Yeah,
talking about
exactly.
it.
Yep. So
Okay. That's actually kind of a cool tool. I hadn't used that before.
I think it's fairly new.
Yeah, it needs more action options, but other than that,
well, it's a lot like Range Trainer Pro, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. It's tough
But
with multi-way. Like that's a lot of different factors.
I don't think Range Trainer Pro has multi-way though.
No, not yet. I think they're working on it.
Somebody's got to give me a Range Trainer Pro lesson because I was trying to play around with it and I was a bit lost. I don't
You
think
should.
I'm getting all the post flop stuff that I'm supposed to be getting.
Oh,
Okay,
you
if
should
you
definitely look at it. It's such a cool tool. Keith does his off-table tools. He's pretty handy with it. He'd be someone to talk to.
Yeah.
yeah, and he's made some videos,
Yeah, I
primer
tried.
or tutorials.
Yeah, I was watching one of those, but it was from 2 years ago. But I couldn't find the buttons that he was pushing, so I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know
maybe they've updated the
what I was doing wrong.
program
And
since
then
then.
Ryan was using it in that video, and I couldn't find the screens he was using either.
Yeah, I think it's probably just a little outdated, the videos themselves. Send him an email. Send him an email. I know he loves working with that kind of stuff and helping people develop it. He really knows how to get the most out of that.
Okay, so I should unshare my screen here, unless you want to do it. Let's
No, that makes sense. Here, I think I can just take it away from you. Can I? Maybe I can't.
How do I do that now? Oh, sorry.
Ah, here we go. I can there. Stop sharing. There we go.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, interesting spot. So I guess the one question, we've got a little more time left today. The one question that I want to talk a little more abstractly is this question of at one point. So when Ryan's doing the video, he's got students in the chat, and he responds to one of them. That he's kind of responding to the question that I have, which is, aren't we getting worse hands to fold when we open shove ace king there? And he says, yes, we technically are getting worse hands to fold. And so I think this is just one of those spots where there's just too many general rules that, of course, there's going to be some of them in conflict with others at time to time, because it feels like it's one of those places where we are allowing our opponents to play perfectly. They're only going to continue with better hands than ours and fold with worse hands than ours. And I get that when you're like short stacked and winning what's in the pot matters a lot right now, so you don't mind kind of closing them out. But there's something about it that, yeah, go ahead.
I don't know that we're opening in an ICM situation to try to get value from worse hands. I think we're opening trying to get everybody to fold.
So then who cares what hand we
Mm.
have then? Like, why don't we do that with all our hands then?
Well, because if we are called,
right,
we do have an ace king.
Right.
And we don't have deuce 7.
Yeah.
So we can do that with our big hands, hoping everybody folds. We gain the, a small amount of chips, but even there it's what, 2 big blinds?
Mm-hmm.
And we have 20. So that's 10% of our stack right there. And with no effort. And then, like I say, if we just get called and nobody jams, we still are going into the flop with a premium holding.
Yep, that's true.
So that's why we would open. And as we could see from Dave's display there from poker coaching, the big blind should have folded his pocket threes.
Right.
And then we would have probably called the jam, and we would have been heads up against another guy with ace king, and we would have chopped the pot.
That's right. I didn't see a 4 flush come on that one, so that's probably how that would have gone.
Instead, the guy who made a mistake in the big blind by calling with pocket threes,
right,
and then recalling our rejam with pocket threes, hits a 3. Both ace kings hit a king.
I know, king on the river for maximum pain.
So it's like, yeah, it's just poker's so stupid.
Why do we play this stupid game anyway? What a stupid game we play.
So really in that spot, what we should have done is opened. I mean, there's no reason not to open. There's no reason to shove. There's no reason to shove. There's no reason to fold. You just min open and then fold to the action that happened afterwards. Period.
There was a, sorry, while I think of it, there was a free video with Jonathan Little playing around with this tool a little bit a couple days ago on his YouTube channel. If you
right on
for that.
Nice. Yeah, well, I
can't
can see
remember
it.
the title, but I don't know if he was just doing something. He happened to use this tool to do it, but anyway.
Nice.
There was another thing on the video that I kind of wanted to ask you guys about, because I was foggy on the concept a little bit. And I know you guys would be better, or at least Rob would. He was talking about the 2 different terms. We're talking about a dry versus wet board and a dynamic versus static board. I probably said those in the wrong order, but
no, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
I'm trying to, and none of the times he said it, it seemed to matter the distinction between the two. And then I got foggy on what the hell is the distinction between the two. I know one of them has to do with the nuts changing, but I didn't really, I couldn't get my head around. I know that's dynamic, right? It's supposed to be, is the nuts going to change on the next card?
Yeah, basically, I
How
mean,
is that different from dry versus wet?
dry versus wet in my mind
It's
just
just-
comes down to how many draws are on it, like how many
Yeah.
actual draws. So flush draws and straight draws. Whereas static versus dynamic comes down to how likely are the nuts to change. So a hand like uh 6-6-2 rainbow is dry, but it's also dynamic because overcards are going to change the, but it's not like there's draws on that board, but it's not a static board. Whereas a board like 10 Jack Queen hearts is a wet board, but I don't know, Rob, would you say that it's actually a fairly static board because
Yeah,
it's
it's
like it's not
I
like
think
a flush
right,
is still going to be the hand that most often
right,
is the winner.
right. It's not gonna change much. Whatever whoever's ahead now on the flop on that flop is probably gonna stay ahead. There's
Yeah,
not gonna be a lot unless somebody happens to have the ace of hearts, that
right.
and the other person has a king of hearts or whatever. But I mean, it's just so yeah, it's not as dynamic as your first example. If you look at a flop, let's say a flop is 9, 6 deuce. There's no real, what a 7-8 is probably your only, straight draw. Other than that, there's no flush draws. It's 9-7, 9-6 deuce rainbow. If you have ace 9 and you were the pre-flop aggressor and it's checked to you, how much do you bet? You bet big because you want to protect against the overcards because that's a very dynamic board. Because whoever's ahead now is not necessarily going to be ahead by the river. So a lot can change. So that's the strict definition of a dynamic board.
So your example of the 6-6 deuce or whatever it was, be dynamic, but if it was a big pair instead, like ace ace or king king deuce, it wouldn't be so dynamic, right?
No,
I agree. I
So
agree.
yeah,
I was
you're
trying to
absolutely
get my
right.
head around the the paired boards and the betting small. uh, and when it mattered whether it was the low pair or the high pair. I got to get my head around more of whether it's dynamic or not. Is that the
Um, it, I mean, they're kind of edge cases. I think that has a lot more to do with the position of the players. Like if it was under the gun versus big blind, you're not going to have a lot of 6x hands in your ranges. But if it's button versus big blind, then you're going to see more sixes in both
right?
ranges, honestly.
Yeah,
Um, so honestly, Dave, it probably wasn't a great example to give you because it's a little tricky. I like Rob's better, the 9-6-2. That's a
yeah.
very dynamic board, even though it's not very wet. It's pretty
Yeah,
dry,
it's a very
but it's
dry
still
board.
dynamic.
Think of wet and dry as action.
Yeah,
You know, if a wet board, you can see a lot of action. There's going to be, because people are going to be attacking that kind of board, a very wet board. A dry board it's like the 6 deuce deuce or deuce 6-6. It's a very dry board. There's not much is going to change there. But in dynamic, when you look at dynamic and static, you want to think about how the nuts are going to change. And when you think about how the nuts are going to change, that tells you whether it's static or dynamic. And like I say, if it's an action board where you can see a lot of betting because because the board hits both ranges so well, like a 9-10 jack of all hearts, that's going to hit the under the gun range and it's going to hit the big blind calling range because they're all both going to have a lot of stuff that hits that board. So now it's called an action flop. And so that would be a wet flop is an action flop.
what you say is that yeah, anyway, I should think of who got the nuts advantage as well as not on the paired board. I have to think about it a little bit more than it's just a paired board. I have to think of who's got the nuts advantage, basically, is the other
Yeah,
concept.
paired boards are interesting because we think of them as boards that are hard to hit. Like they're what because there's so many different ways to break boards down, to break flops down. Gareth James did a good bit on this. I think we even have some of his graphs in our forums. It's just no matter what your ranges are, they don't hit boards like 662 very often. They only hit like that board only hits a really small part of anybody's range. So typically you can one of the things that you can do with that knowledge is you can make a small bet with a lot of your own range and expect to get folds from that because it's harder for your opponent to intersect with it. On a board like 10-10 Jack, that board's going to be, even though it's a paired board, it's going to hit someone's range a lot more often because they're going to have tens and jacks and queen kings and 7-8s and 8-9s and stuff like that. So the paired board is really just one quality of the board, and you have to sort of think about what's the rank of the hands, and then you can get deeper into, okay, what position did they open from? How many of these middle connectors are they even going to have? But yeah, like we said at the beginning of the session today, it's a big game. There's a lot of factors. When I was starting in poker, my goal was to just give myself a little checklist on how to play every hand of poker. And I was like, I'll just give myself a little series of notes with little decision trees and things to remember for every spot. I didn't take me long to get 4 pages into a checklist and be like, okay, well, this isn't going to work. We're not going to be able to come up with an algorithm.
Too many options for each one of those decisions.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So
Now, since you brought up Gareth James, you commented on some tweet of his that was very interesting this week, and I've forgotten what it was about.
It was about,
do you remember what it was about? Or?
It was about flop texture betting or something like that. Let me see if I can
quasi related to what we were talking about, I think, but
yeah, let me see. I'll take a 1 second before we close just to see if I can pull it up here. I don't know if you guys have something interesting to talk about for a couple minutes. I'll just scroll through here and see. Well, why is it not showing up here? Oh, here it is. The unsexy secret to crushing flop strategy. And yeah, he's talking about you don't need a perfect flop strategy. You need a way to study flop strategy so you can simplify the process and make decisions later in the hand, which is sort of what we're talking about here.
he had a whole threaded tweet or something about it, but
yeah, he's looking at different board textures and he sort of well, here's one of his questions. What should our strategy be on a 25 big blind, low jack versus big blind hand on ace jack 10 two-tone? And so he wants to know, should we be betting pure big bet, pure small bet, mix of big and small, mix of big and check, mix of small and check, mix of all 3 options? And do you guys want to take a guess at that, since I'm just looking at it here?
Jack 10?
Ace jack 10 two-tone. We open low jack, called from the big blind. I can't see how many blinds we playing effectively here. Looks like 20. We have 25 big blinds and we're covered by the big blind player.
That's not a lot of big blinds.
No.
You're going to have to play this one a little closer to the vest, but I would say that our range smashes this much more than their range because they didn't 3-bet.
Right.
It's a single raise pot, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'd probably want to bet close to half, a little over half pot.
Yeah, and that's actually what Gareth says here when he breaks it down in I'm not sure what's he using here. I'm not sure if it's PO solver or what, but he says our overarching strategy in this spot is to bet 100% of the time, mainly for a big sizing.
Yep.
And I think that's right. Part of that because it favors our range. We've got
Yep.
nuts advantage, and it is it's a wet board because there's a flush draw out there. So I'd say that is a dynamic board, ace jack 10, because straight is the nuts right now, but there's an easy, obvious redraw to the flush, which would have very effectively changed the nuts.
I gotta go back and find Chris's deep dive on this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
he has a real good way of breaking it down for us.
Okay.
Yeah, so check that one out. There's some good stuff in there too. All right, gang. Good conversation. I'm shocked. We managed to find a couple rabbit holes. Basically, just talked about one hand, one hand, and some of the factor. But this is it. This is because we're not trying to solve. We're not trying to like memorize a strategy. We're trying to build a strategy that starts with us knowing what factors are in play, and when to apply which general rules and that kind of thing, and what to do when they disagree with each other, and conflict. That's what makes this game great. This stupid game that we love so much. All right, guys. Well, anything else you want to cover on that subject, or should we wrap this puppy up?
I think we're good.
We're
Well,
good.
have a fantastic weekend, fellas. See you on Monday for the for the podcast, if not before. And stay warm out there. I don't have to worry about you, Rob, but Dave, stay warm
No,
out there. It's the last day of winter. Yeah.
What is it? It's only 60 degrees right now.
Obligatory comment about the weather from retired Rob Washington. Good for you, Rob. We're all jealous. I'll have you know, Dave and I are experiencing the last cold day of winter right now. It's going to start getting warmer tomorrow, and it doesn't get cold again. So we'll all be out there in t-shirts and shorts like you lucky duck.
Good for you.
All right, I'll see you later, guys. Thanks again.
See you guys.
Bye.